Well, first of all, welcome everybody to the News Tribune's roundtable on our series of stories about 7-on-7 football, private trainers, what recruiters think about how to get recruited, or just our series on off-season football. With us, we have 5 coaches here, another coach over the phone. We also have Johnny Durocher, the Director of Football Operations from the Rise Football Academy, former All-American at Bethel High School. To my right is Darren McKay, who's the 6th-year coach, entering her 6th year, at Todd Beamer High School before a NPSL Olympic. Next to him, we have Jared Gervais of Auburn Mountainview High School, also entering his 7th year. Got one on Darren McKay. Next to him, we have the old guy, Dave Miller, 18th year, about to enter at Lakes. I understand River Ridge coach Steve Schultz next to him, entering his 16th year at River Ridge. And then also we have Ricky Daley from Mount Tahoma, entering his 4th year, also former University of Puget Sound assistant football coach. And over the phone, we have Thomas Ford from Stadium High School, also entering his 4th year, and also former University of Puget Sound assistant coach. And to get this started, I think just a kind of an overview from our 3-part series, leading off with their story on 7-on-7 to the relationship between coaches and private trainers, and then with what college recruiters had to say about getting recruited. What were the biggest takeaways that you guys took on what comes next? Like, what needs to be adjusted in this culture to be able to get it to where you guys see it needs to be?
I think that the initial article was really good. It talked about what it takes to get that scholarship, and it comes down to how you play on Friday night. You have to make plays on Friday night. When it comes to all the extra opportunities that kids have, you know, when I raised my kids, we had them going to 2 or 3 different things during the same day. My wife was incredible doing that, and I thought, man, this is too much for them. And then I grew up on a farm where we worked 8, 9, 10-hour days, and I thought, well, they're getting their work in and they're loving it. That was the key. They were loving it. So I think whatever somebody is doing with high school kids, whether it's playing club or playing in the sport, they absolutely need to love it. And that's what it came away from that article. So you got to love being out there. As far as like the extra opportunities, I'm big on doing multiple sports. You talked about that before. I want my kids playing a winter sport. I want them playing a spring sport, and for several reasons, and I'll try to be quick with this. One, they're getting grade checked every other week at our school, and it helps keep their grades up, because that's a challenge. And you mentioned that in the article. College coaches are saying, keep your grades up, qualify, get the SAT scores, and then we'll talk. So the other reason is I want them competing in a situation where it's one and done. I coach my kids through AAU basketball, and then I watched my daughter play for the Rotary. She played the elite, and that was an incredible opportunity. But it got to the point where if they lost a tournament, it was like, okay, well, we'll just get them next week. There was always another tournament. There's always something else, and we'll just do that. But in high school sports, it comes down to that pressure of being, you have to perform now or your season is flat over. So I like the pressure of that. I like them being involved in the school, and I like them also playing sports and getting grade checked. I tell my parents, if you got the funds and you got the excitement and the enthusiasm and you want to go above and beyond, then absolutely go ahead and go for it. We partner with Rise. Rise has been really good for us because I talk with Reggie, and he coordinates our kids with what we're doing, and they don't miss anything. In fact, they had a big Rise tournament, like a 7-on-7, headed down to Texas, and it was or a combine, the Nike combine, and my kids were in the state track meet. I was coaching the sprinters. We had the 4x1 team, and Ryan Blash, who's he's playing at the next level next year. He goes, well, my parents already paid for this, so I got to go to this and not the track meet. And I called Reggie before I could call Ryan. Reggie had called Ryan's mom and said, he's not going. It's canceled. They're going to the state track meet. That's what I needed, and so that's what I have. But it can't overlap and interfere with another school from sport or a school sport. Yeah, that's right.
And the other part of this, the other facet. Oh, did you have something to say, Thomas?
No, if we're not moving on to another question, I can wait till you're finished.
Oh yeah, no, you go ahead.
I don't know. To me, from the outside looking in, right? When I read the article, I just felt like it was really negative. it was almost like pitting coaches against the private trainer, and I know that wasn't the intent, but it certainly, came off that way. I know that, there's, like Coach just said, most of these guys, the guys that are doing it right, they're not asking their kids to miss anything school-related. I haven't had one of my kids miss anything that we were doing as a team. For example, we had a kid that was supposed to go on this college tour with my brother with FSP. He didn't tell my brother that it, kind of was in the same weekend as our team camp. As soon as I told my brother that, my brother said he can't go, and not even like asked if he couldn't go. And I felt like that part wasn't represented. And I think when we all sit around and we talk about this, I think everyone is on the same page. When you do this right, and these guys are going to these places to get extra work, I think it's a great thing.
And I think,
but again, with every good trainer, there's a bad trainer. So I know there's trainers out there that will suggest their kids miss workouts for their team or any other organized functions with the team. And I think that's the biggest thing that got missed in that message. Like, it wasn't packaged that way. It was almost like an all or nothing thing when that first article came out. And I think that's why coaches like myself were kind of frustrated. Like, wait a minute, that's not happening at my school. And I think, again, that's just my perception of that original article. It was very negative. It was almost like like I said, an all or nothing thing. Either, these kids are doing it 7-on-7 or they're with their team, which I don't think is even close to the case.
Well, I think Johnny can speak more to, and I would love to kind of ask you this question. Again, Johnny Durocher, Director of Football Operations with Rise Academy, former Pac-12 quarterback himself. Could you speak to the overall mission of just specifically to your guys' organization, the Rise Football Academy, and what you see as the benefits of players working out with the private trainers there? And the other facet of that is your 7-on-7 programs. You had said to me before when we talked that it's a small facet of what you do, but can you explain what you see are the benefits of also the 7-on-7 program in that?
Yeah, one thing I think is misunderstood is how much time 7-on-7 actually takes. It's the way we run it, and other people run it differently, but it's usually a 4-week league, and then we practice a couple Sundays, and then it's tournaments. So I don't guess I really understand where the whole playing multiple sport thing comes into play, because I ran the numbers on our stuff, and every kid, we got 76 kids in our program, and 57 of them are two-sport athletes. Not only are they two-sport athletes, but our coaching staff goes and watches them play basketball games. They go watch them at the track meet. They go watch baseball games. So I don't know. I think we're letting the kids kind of say, well, I'm too tired to go play basketball. Well, then you never really wanted to play basketball in the first place. If you're saying you're too tired to go run track, what's track practice? How long is it? An hour and a half? Hour? Then you didn't really want to run track. And so where I think the miscommunication is between the high school coaches and us, using the high school kid as a conduit of information where they're kids, right? Well, if something gets a little hard, then it's like, you know what? It's a lot easier just to get on my Snapchat or whatever and just be like, I'm done, I don't want to do this, and I can use other people as an escape route. So I don't understand where the whole two-sport thing, multiple sport thing comes. I mean, that kind of blows my mind a little bit, and I think that if we as trainers and coaches can get on the same page and have open lines of communication. I mean, I've had it with some kids that played basketball, that they played 7-on-7 with us, and they go play basketball for their school team, and they tell the high school coach, hey, I can't come to this because I have a 7-on-7 practice. And it's like, whoa, what? And then the high school coach calls us, and it's like, no, absolutely not. That's not what we're supporting. That's not what we're doing. Like, you go to your basketball stuff. Like, it's non-negotiable. So I think if we can, as coaches and trainers, open up these lines of communication and talk about things, those problems get alleviated super quickly, because we're not. I mean, the very best time I ever had in my life was playing high school sports, and playing all three of them. And so I don't think anyone is trying to take that away from kids. I think the kids, when they go, oh well, this is hard, I'm doing something every night of the week, I don't want to do that. Well, guess what? That's what it takes. There's no decisions to make. If you want to be a really good high school athlete, this is what it entails. You don't get to dictate what is going to make you successful. If you want to go be a two-sport guy, then guess what? Your month of June is packed. You know, it's non-negotiable. You know what I mean? So I think the first thing that needs to happen is that we need to figure out a way to open up these lines of communication and talk and have constant dialogue all the time. I think that's one thing that would help. As kind of what you were talking about, like what our mission is, I think that high school football coaches is the toughest job that you could have. You're responsible for 100 kids. It's more impactful than, you know, what we do. You know, you're with the kids more. You guys are scrutinized a lot more than we are. And so I think there needs to be a push from our end as trainers, or, you know, whatever you want to call us, like, hey, what your high school coach says goes. You know, whether it's, you know, this technique or that technique, like, not worried about that. What your high school coach says is what you need to be working on. Because we all have different terminology, and, you know, we're going to coach a three-step drop, maybe different. The difference isn't what matters. The difference is that they're getting reps, you know. I forgot what you asked the other thing.
Oh, the other part was also the benefits of your guys' 7-on-7 program, what you do there.
Well, I think there's a couple benefits of 7-on-7. Number one, like we were talking about earlier, it's reps. Kids are playing football, and I throw up the quotes because it's not football. You know, I mean, kids aren't getting hurt playing 7-on-7. You know, I don't know what the numbers are, but I know from our experience in 2.5 years, we've seen 2 kids get hurt. That's it. So they're getting to play, and we can sit here and talk about 7-on-7 is not real football. Yeah, like no one's saying it is. None of us are saying that 7-on-7 is real football. You know, it's an activity, right, that has football components to it. Yeah.
And I don't mean to cut, and Johnny, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm right with you with what you're saying. You know, with that first arc, it didn't seem like that. Like you said, there isn't a choice to be made. These kids can do multiple sports.
Yeah.
Right, and then my big gripe with when people say, well, 7-on-7 is real football. Well, neither is lifting weights. Neither is doing agility drills. That's not real football, but we still need to do those things.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that are going to be building the skills, you know, building the strength, building the endurance, building, you know, the change of direction. All those things are still relevant to football.
Yeah.
And when you really think about it, if guys are doing the 7-on-7 on the weekends, competing against some of these guys that, you know, don't go to their school and they don't know, I don't see where the benefit lacks. I see all benefit. I don't really see a lot of, you know, negative effects from the 7-on-7 stuff. Because again, I get it. It's not real football, but it's the closest thing that they're going to get when the WIAA is telling us coaches, hey, you can't coach your kid.
So that goes kind of into the.
I think
You know what I mean?
There's no question. There's no question that getting reps, you're going to get better. I think we're all in this for the same reason, to help kids get better, and that's why we chose this profession. Whether you're at high school or whether you're at a training facility, we all have the same goal. And I do think, Johnny, you make a good point. The more we can understand your philosophy, then maybe some of the assumptions and miscommunications can be overcome. I do think we live in a world where the specialization is something we're battling right now. That doesn't necessarily come from RISE or FSP, but it's something we're battling, and I still think what's best for kids is to play multiple sports. Sounds like you do as well. So I think we're all on the same page. We've just got to get to know each other a little better so that we can maybe help the kids a little better. I'm all for kids getting better and getting reps, as long as it doesn't take them away from our team plan. We have a process. Whether it's weight rooms, we have 7-on-7 as well, spring ball, all that good stuff, camp. And I don't want kids missing anything, because the kids we've had who've done well, the kids who do well, are the kids that are there all the time doing all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And the kids that are missing it aren't going to do well.
I mean, we went down to Florida this past June, and we didn't have 5 of our guys. You know, it's June, Washington spring football time. Go do your thing. I mean, that's what it is, and we had to plug holes and fill gaps and stuff, but again, it's 7-on-7. We want to win, but not at the expense of costing a kid a chance to go win a job. You know, I mean, so that happens all the time.
I kind of wanted to get to the next question. You go ahead, Ricky.
No, I mean, I was going to touch on that. I had a kid that, you know, we had a scrimmage that weekend and missed it for 7-on-7, and he asked me about it. I said, actually, go ahead, go. What it did for me was it just gave somebody else some chance to get some work that, you know, because, you know, the kid is going to play, going to start. I mean, yes, and you know, it gave us a chance to look at another kid. And for me, it wasn't like he was saying he's going to go, you know, to the lake and do nothing. so he's not going. You know, he was doing a football thing, and he, you know, and he likes to compete. And how could you not go and fight for a national championship when you did all those things in the spring leading up to that? So I was okay with him going. Some other coaches may not. You know, my thing is the specialization is great. You know, Johnny and I talked about getting our quarterback in it. Our kids just can't afford to go do things. If I could have, you know, our guys do it, would be great. I know FSP called us to go up and, you know, how Kennedy was, you know, how the teams work in there. But again, we couldn't. I can't get my team involved over there. You know, get there for one, and then pay that to get the work. And that's always around the times when we don't have anything anyway. So for now, I'm all for it, like Coach Ford said, and you know, and everything. I'm all for it. It's all beneficial for me, knowing our kids. I mean, for the most part, the practices are when we don't have anything.
Well, that actually segues pretty well into my next question on this. And I pulled up the high school coaches survey, which I believe all of you, I know were at least sent this. I'm not sure exactly who all responded to it. I kept it anonymous so you guys could all kind of speak freely about your thoughts on this. But in the survey that came up, which I thought was interesting, is 72.5% of the 40 coaches who responded said that players are missing their school's team workouts, practices, and other activities to train with these private facilities. And 75% of the coaches said that they're seeing athletes not play other sports to instead train. So 75% of the coaches say, yeah, kids are not being multi-sport athletes, we're saying they're specializing. But you kind of talked about, too, like, yeah, you're saying go for it. Yeah, go. If you're going to miss one of the things, you're doing a football-related activity. I think, Steve, you even suggested that to me, too, in an email you sent to me. Like, if he's doing a football-related activity, you seem pretty fine with it. But if we're looking at the 72.5% and 75%, what do you coaches see as the issue with kids missing your own team workouts or not playing other sports?
Because we're one of the only sports that we actually are modified. I mean, we're monitored. We have pretty much 20 OTAs, and we have 10 days in pads. And so if you're having, you know, and that's per kid, but are you going to bring that kid out? You've got the nucleus of your team. You've got a scrimmage, and now you're missing one or two of your kids if they're missing during that time period. We haven't had that issue as much, but since we are monitored as far as how much contact we get with our kids, as far as football specific, now we can train and lift weights, you know, as much as we want. I think that was the main comment that I was going to make, is that the perception of why does one have to be better than the other? And I know one of the comments was that the guy sitting here with me, that we would not be qualified to train at one of those facilities. And based on what level we played at, you know, to say that, it's similar to like Belichick. He played Division III. I mean, Peterson played Division II, and Mike Leach didn't even play football in college. Or the opportunities that some of us have had where we were graduate assistant coaches in the Pac-10. And so that experience that we had, whether we're holding the hand of the kid to get him to go to school, and anybody that's ever been a GA, you know, you're in charge of nothing, but you're a part of everything. You have to be a part of all those things. So, and sometimes the training pieces, you come in contact with the strength coaches that at that time there was Rob Oviatt, who then later went on to LSU and Kentucky and WSU. And when you're around those guys, you're picking up stuff. And so part of the training piece is what I like, and why I want to be involved in the strength conditioning piece all the time is one, from the recovery aspect. And I know if a person is dinged up, and if I pull back on a kid and then they go train, the reason I pulled back because I needed that kid to be able to get that recovery, and now we've taken that time away.
That's an interesting facet of it, like the not getting the burnout effect on kids. Is that an issue that some of you coaches see in this as well? Is if you're doing the training on top of playing multiple sports, on top of also trying to be a student, that there's an issue with that?
Well, I think like Steve said, I agree with Steve. Kids can do things all day long. So it's not a matter of doing a lot of stuff. We want kids to be busy. We want them to stay out of trouble. My kids, I mean, my son Drew, he'd play a baseball game in the afternoon and go do 7-on-7 in the evening. He was always doing something. You know, a lot of our top kids have done that. Johnny probably did that as well. We did that. So I don't think it's that. I think it's doing the same thing year round. I think cross training has great benefit. I think whether it's volleyball club playing year round, I've seen kids at the high school level burn out. They've come to me and said that. And we're not talking about just football players. We're talking about soccer players, volleyball players. Sure. And so that's a concern. I think nowadays, the other thing that, just to kind of piggyback on that, this myth about you have to be marketed to get a scholarship, that bothers me, because I come from the days when we had to sit down for 6 hours at a time and make a VHS for a kid to send out, okay? And now with Huddle, with Huddle, every kid gets evaluated. I don't care if you're at Mossy Rock or Hop Tulips. You're going to get evaluated. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get recruited. Now, sometimes a kid gets evaluated and he's not being recruited because people think his arms are too short or his grades aren't high enough or he's not good enough. And it's got to be somebody's fault or that he's not being marketed enough. And the reality is, he's just not good enough. And so that has to be somebody's fault. And so all of a sudden it goes in all different directions. And so I think what scares me a little bit is this social media hype machine where every kid that goes and pays money, I'm going to get me a D1 scholarship even if I'm a 5'6" quarterback.
A lot of coaches seem to pin that kind of on the 7-on-7 select culture. When we talk about the select 7-on-7 culture, what are your coaches' experiences with kids who've been in those environments and coming back to your
Let's
program?
face it, we all have incoming 9th grade parents that some are great and some have it in perspective and some have great understanding of what the high school experience should be all about. And then we have some that just come in with an absolute agenda because little Billy had 5 touchdowns in Little League in 8th grade because he was faster than everybody else, but he's 5'4" and he ran around everybody else. And if he doesn't get better, he's not going to play for you in high school. And that comes in with that mentality. And so we all have to deal with that, and I understand that's part of the job. But I don't think it helps when we have some entities, and I'm not throwing this at Rise or FSP. It's a social media issue. It's an internet issue. I think we got to deal with the fact that scholarships come from guys with good grades, guys that have physical characteristics, guys that have good attitudes, guys that get the recommendation of their head coach because they know they can handle the grind, and not hype and not social media marketing. It's all those other things. And so I think right now a lot of the parents think, oh, if my kid goes in this program and he gets marketed, he's going to automatically get a scholarship to Alabama. And that's just the biggest myth out there right now.
Or transfer.
And if he's not getting letters from Alabama, now he's got
the
to go to another
transfers and
school.
recruiting are probably actually at the heart of this, the biggest issue, and the coaches fearing 7-on-7, kind of lack of trust, lack of communication is we're afraid of kids transferring. I don't want my kids to go anywhere, and if I see kids moving around that are associated with certain programs, I'm like, whoa, I don't want my kids there because they might be like, hey, have you thought about this school? So I think that is one thing that kind of scares people. We haven't had that issue, and I know a lot of teams haven't had that issue, but it's just kind of one of those things that seems scary and intimidating. But I've talked to Durocher about this a bunch. You got to make, as a coach, your program needs to be something kids want to be a part of.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's something we do at Mountain View. We want kids to want to be a part of Auburn Mountainview football and not want to go somewhere else. And obviously there's times where kids, for whatever reason, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, big brother, get confused and kind of convinced that going somewhere else would be better. But I think that's kind of where a lot of the mistrust kind of comes in. And then the recruiting part too is tough because, you know, when people are talking about getting recruited, parents get confused. Now that's one more thing for us as high school coaches to have to deal with. Well, my kid went to this. Hey, why is my kid not getting recruited? It must be you, Coach Gervais. It can't be Coach Durocher. He's awesome. Coach Durocher is awesome.
Must be you just
but, you know, and I think that's one thing that kind of scares us as high school coaches. I think a lot of the things where we're talking about 7-on-7 culture is bad and look at him hold the ball like this and hot dogging and showboating and all that stuff. I think a lot of it comes down to that lack of trust and lack of communication where we're just kind of scared and nervous about what's happening. And I think, like Coach Durocher said, if we communicate, like if I've never talked to Reggie and I've never talked to Tracy, but they don't seem like bad guys, and I bet if I talked to them, I'd feel a whole lot more comfortable. And if they talk to other guys, I bet other guys would feel a whole lot more comfortable with what's going on. Because they seem like good guys that want what's best for kids.
That's the key. The big elephant in the room is always the perception of what's going on. And then when you dig into it and find out what's really going on, that elephant gets a lot smaller.
Yeah.
You should call Reggie because working with Rise, you know, the big blow up is on 7-on-7. Well, they do a lot of strength, speed, film. They do all of those things there, you know. And yeah, you can't do the same action. I agree with you 100%. You get stress fractures. Adults get stress fractures by doing the same activity over and over again. But a lot of the things that are going on there are speed dynamic drills and strength drills, you know, that, yeah, do they get them from us? Yeah, they do. They get them from us, but we open it up and we have them for every level of kid, right? It's like a really good basketball player in a tiny school. They go and play with their high school team, you know, for the month of June, and it's good for them because they learn how to be great, meaning they make their teammates better. But in order for them to get challenged, they got to go to that select group. I gave up one of our starting young corners coming in to spring ball for 4 days of spring practice to go down and compete at a 7-on-7 nationally. Now, the reason why I did that is because what he needed, what I needed for him to do by Friday nights in the fall is compete at a very high level against very good juniors and seniors, and you know, and he could get that there, and that's what I needed. Now, if I needed him to stay, all I had to do is make a phone call, and he's staying. The whole recruiting piece of it comes down. I agree. Now, all that that's the big thing. That's the sore in all the coaches right now, is because of the hype, because they paid for this website, because of this. Every parent thinks their kid is a scholarship kid, you know. And you can take a look at him, and you can take. I say this to my parents: go home, stand in front of the mirror with you and your wife. Did you guys play Division III, Division II, Division? What does your genetics give that kid? And then back off and let's have a great program. You know, that's the problem. Is the hype of everything else, and then 7-on-7. You guys just got dumped into that group, I believe, of everybody paying for everything. Where I'm at is you said that you know, they can do everything if they really want to. The struggle that I see is yeah, they'll have track practice and then they have rise. Some parents are like going, you know what, you get to pick one because I work a 10-hour shift and I make X amount of money and I have X amount of time and I don't have time to take you from here and then go you know, we're in Lacey, go up to Puyallup and fight that traffic 3 nights a week. Now the ones that do, God bless them, because they get a great experience there.
Sure. If I could just say, you know, kind of touch on 2 things that Coach Gervais said. I know Dave said this last year when talking about we did a similar thing last year with recruiting and all this stuff. And when it really gets down to it, we're never going to be able to convince a parent that a kid's not Division I if they're heart set on that, right? And so normally those kids that are going to transfer, those kids are going to transfer no matter what we do. And then those same kids typically get the same result to wherever school they transfer to. And so I don't look at it like, oh, I'm going to lose my kids if they're playing with other kids. I believe in what we're doing in my program. And I feel like
so do we,
if you believe in, right, exactly. And most of you guys aren't losing a whole lot of guys, you know, as a result. And so the second thing, and I think Coach just talked about this, was, you know, we only have, for example, our program, we're a 4-day-a-week program during the off season. But I got to make that program, you know, not specific for my best guys. I got to make it great for all of my guys. And so what we do is really, really good. And I tell my guys this all the time. If you want to be a great player, I don't care what you do, but you got to do some stuff on your own. And I think that's where the benefit of these places becomes, where, you know, those guys that have that internal drive, that want to get a little bit more, have an opportunity to do that and compete against some guys they don't see every day. Well, so, like I said, twofold. You know, there's some of the stuff that we're doing as high school coaches is not for that elite athlete, and at the same time, a lot of the kids that think they're elite athletes, they aren't. And so that's where I guess we got to have that happy medium of, hey, guys, yes, go do stuff on your own, but you shouldn't be leaving places because the grass is greener on the other side. Because again, a lot of those kids, we all know, a lot of those kids that leave end up going to that other place, and they're in the same exact position they were when they left.
I think the part too is that we talk about kids doing things on their own if they can afford it. And so that's a huge issue as far as creating the haves and the have-nots. If you're working primarily with inner city kids, they're on a large basis, they are not going to be able to afford this training. And I know I've heard it talked about, well, there's scholarships for guys. Well, if you look like Austin Sperry-Jenkins, I know there wasn't as many training opportunities at that time, but he didn't pay for any of that. And it's a great marketing for whoever is having whatever the training is or whatever the passing academy is to say that person trained them, but they didn't pay. I mean, the scholarship is not going to a 5'10", 155-pound kid that runs a 4'9". That kid's not getting the scholarship.
So, every kid in our 7-on-7 program pays. Every kid. That's the only fair way.
We talked about there be a
every kid
NCAA
pays.
violation.
Every kid pays.
And I'm talking maybe like the kid that wants to do it, but their family doesn't have the means.
Then we make arrangements, payment plan, whatever. And I know that's not the point of your deal, but every kid that we have in our 7-on-7 program pays. It's too expensive not to. You know, we can't let 5 kids that are really good not pay and then make the other. That's not fair. You know, we don't operate that way.
You guys are in business for a reason.
You got to keep the doors open.
Try and make money.
Well, 7-on-7 is not the way to keep the doors open and make money.
But
but
giving stuff away.
Yeah.
But 7-on-7 gives your guys who are training an opportunity to put that training on display, because I know that you guys do. One of my favorite days that I heard you guys do is you guys compete. You do one-on-ones. You have wideouts going against corners. My corners are doing one-on-ones playing man. I like to play man if my guys could do it.
Yeah.
And so you're competing. I like the competitive part of it. But if you're training, you've got to have some kind of carrot out there to play, and that's your only method is 7-on-7.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on real quick, the last question about 7-on-7 before we kind of move on to something else here. But in the coaches survey, I wanted to have you guys kind of explain the thoughts behind this. But in our survey, 97% of the coaches said they believe this has become a big enough problem that the WIA should probably look into address it. A lot of coaches said we don't know what that means, but that the WIA should step in and do something. Another one was 87% of the coaches said that they worry about the future of football because of 7-on-7. And what is the thought process behind that when coaches indicate that?
I would really like to see us, like Johnny and Thomas talked about and we all talked about, I'd really like to see us be able to sit down and work together for what's best for kids. And if that means there's times where when we can't touch kids, that's when the times of 7-on-7 are. And then when we have our times and they're off limits, and so we work together on it. I think the bottom line is we're all trying to do what's best for kids and help every kid get better and reach their full ceiling. And if we can communicate and find a way to do that, nothing against the WIA. I don't think they're going to have any impact of any kind. But I hope that we can sit down and maybe communicate more as coaches. Like Steve said, I encourage my guys to go to Rise if they're not doing anything else, because they're getting better. They're getting reps. They're getting coached.
Right.
But I want to know that when these kids come back, it has never happened at Rise, and I won't go any further than that, but I don't want kids being told, hey, you should go over here to leave Bethel and go to Rainier Beach, because Rainier Beach, you'll get a scholarship if you go there. You can't get a scholarship out of Bethel? Heck yeah. Bethel's got a good football program.
Yeah.
You can get a scholarship out of any high school football program in the state if you're good enough. So as long as that's not happening, we're good. I think, and that just comes down to, I'm not saying people are doing that, but I've had kids come back to me and say that that's happening. So I'm a little concerned with that. I would never tell a kid to do anything that's going to hurt them, and I think it hurts kids when they transfer. I really do. I think we just want, as coaches, kids to start in our program and be there for 4 years and work the process, work the system, and if they do that, they're going to reach their full ceiling.
I will say that when I spoke to Brian Stranley, the assistant coach at Eastern Washington, a local recruiter, I asked him about that. Is there a possibility you miss guys? And he said, TJ, just yesterday I watched 50 game tapes from guys around the state. With the click of a button on the computer, watching guys. And he said that back in the day when we did VHS tapes, yeah, maybe I miss a guy who's in a smaller school because it's harder for me to get that game tape. But now we don't miss guys, and so I think that's kind of
one of the greatest things ever invented.
And we don't,
for sure.
We don't. You know, I've talked a lot about how much working with Rise, I agree with it, and how I agree with 7-on-7. But interesting enough, we don't do any 7-on-7. What we do is 11-on-11, and we just pass the whole time.
And the Utah coordinators, they do the same thing.
So we'll go to, like, for example, we went to team camp, and I arranged with another coach. I said, hey, we need to work on our pass defense. You got 10 plays, I have 10. Let's just pass and not tell the kids. And so we had a great session, and they didn't even figure it out. I mean, my older guys started to, if I had any older guys. I got one older guy, but they didn't figure it out. And because, like at camp, for example, you'll go 7-on-7 if you do 7-on-7, and then your O-line and D-line, they go over there against the other teams and do 1-on-1. We put them all together. You can't take the quarterback down. It's live. It's counting the guy off the edge. It's knowing who's hot. You get all of that, and in a passing 11-on-11 environment. That being said, Coach mentioned that we only got 10 days in pads, And so
Yeah.
if they're not going to have anything to do I want them playing 7-on-7? Yeah, I'd rather see them playing 7-on-7 than go to a party. So it's just these opportunities. But I agree with Coach Miller. If we sit down and we just sit down and say, hey, when do you have this? What's a good time for you? Here's this. Sit it down. We do that at my high school with sharing our kids for basketball and baseball. You know, we can do that. And we can make it good for all kids. I think it's there.
I want to give Thomas a chance to speak here. Sorry to not give you the chance there. Coach?
Yeah.
I wanted to give you a chance to talk there. It seemed like we kind of cut you off.
Oh, no worries. No, I was just saying, you know, I feel like that's not, I just don't feel like that's happening with these kids transferring. What I think we are seeing is that we are seeing a little bit of the AAU effect, where a kid plays with another kid, they like the kid, they get to know each other, they're buddies, they're not happy where they're at, and then all of a sudden they go where their buddy is. Now, I don't know how you prevent that. I really don't. But at the end of the day, it's like I said, all of us are doing a great job building up our programs, and I think that the numbers of kids transferring are still pretty low. You know, and I can't speak for every single program, but I haven't had many kids leave for football-related reasons. The only kids I've had transfer the last 3 years really have been kids that just moved. You know, and I guess it is what it is at that point. But again, I really feel like the guys that are, we're talking about Rise and FSP the most, but I mean, let's face it, there are a lot of other trainers that are kind of flying under the radar, and I can't tell you what
Absolutely.
they do,
Yeah.
but I know with what, you know, the relationships I've had with both Rise and FSP, I just haven't seen it. I haven't seen, you know, the actual trainer saying, hey, you need to go somewhere else because you'll have a better opportunity. Because if the kid's good, it's like we're all saying, I don't care who you are or where you're at. If you're good enough to play, they're not going to miss you anymore. Like Dave said, huddle is the best invention ever. I mean, now we're not sitting in our film rooms cutting up someone's film for them. They can do it on their own and send it to as many people as they want. And I think more than anything, it's the parents that have this negative or this real big misconception that where you're at matters. When everyone that's talking in this meeting, everybody knows what matters is what your film says. If your film says you can go, the college coach is going to say you're going, no matter what some private trainer or how many 7-on-7 tournaments you played in. That's what's going to matter at the end of the day.
I promised Tony Davis, the coach from Tahoma, that I'd ask this question. He really wanted to be here, but he had some other priorities. For those who don't know Tony Davis, he's entering his 24th year at Tahoma. I believe former Seattle Seahawk player too, and he requested that two things be addressed in this. One is that there is this belief that high school coaches are in their profession for the money, and that if you weren't an NCAA Division I player, you don't know how to prepare. That you don't know how to prepare players for Division I football. He said those are the two beliefs that he thought need to be addressed that came out of this. And
well, I don't know about your guys' paychecks, but certainly I could pretty
you're not buying your own island out in
high school football. Yeah.
Well, I'll answer that since I know where.
Well, I guess the question I want to ask them though is: Are there differences when we look at what an athlete and what their parents are looking for? Are there differences between what the high school coach can provide and his skill set, and what the private trainer can provide and their skill set?
Okay. How active is the coach? You know, I feel like the guys that are speaking in this meeting, they're all very active with recruiting. They're, you know, if they have a player that can play, that they're getting their information out there. When the coaches come by their school, they're letting them know fully about that. You know, but not every coach is the same. You know, I've heard of, you know, from the college recruiters that have come my way that some coaches aren't as prepared or aren't as ready or not as willing to make time in their schedules to promote their athletes. So I really think that, you know, if you're a guy that, because I like the recruiting process. I was on the other end for so long. It's kind of in me. I like helping kids get to where they want to go. And I explain to my kids at the very beginning, at the very beginning of every year and at the end of every football season, we have a recruiting talk. Anyone that wants to continue playing collegiately needs to hear this meeting. And I've told my kids a million times, 99% of you in this room are not Division I football players. That does not mean you can't play college football. And if a guy wants to bad enough, you know, myself and our coaching staff are definitely dedicated to getting their information out there. You know, this year is probably a record year at our school in terms of guys that signed letter of intent. And I had a Division I kid, and I had 3 Division II kids, and I had 4 kids that are going to go play JUCO. That just hasn't happened, but see, this was a class of kids that said, hey, I really want to do this, so we just found them a place to play. And I think if parents can let go of this Division I or bust mentality, it'll help everybody.
Well, I want to respect everybody's time, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I want to answer that too.
That's a good point, Thomas. One of the things I did several years ago, I think we got to a point at Lakes where we had so many kids for so many years that every kid that came in, the parent thought they were going to be the next Reggie Williams or Jermaine Kersey.
Right.
And so I thought to myself, what we've got to do is inform the parents more, because the parents really didn't have enough information. So I started doing a parent night where we just talked recruiting. I'd bring in someone, either a retired college coach that can talk about the process. And that's one of the best things we did, because that took away a lot of the mind movies that parents have because they don't have information. Once they got the information, they understood the process, that really alleviated a lot of the problem. So I think the more communication with parents, informing them of how things work, just really can help a lot.
Recruiting, it's changed.
I also love to get our kids recruited. I mean, I probably oversell our kids at times, because I just love to see our kids get opportunities. Yeah. And Thomas makes a great point. Some kids will only play D1. If they can't play D1, they don't want to play. And when I tell our kids, how much do you love football? If you love football, you'll go play D4 if you have that opportunity. Because there is a place for everybody that wants to play.
You got to be willing to play for free.
You've got to be willing to go and work hard and maybe be a walk-on, maybe find a way to get financial aid, all that stuff.
And a lot of coaches I spoke to said, like, you can kind of recognize a D1 athlete almost right away, like as soon as they walk on the campus. But there are guys that you can work up. But there is a lot of coaches talking like, now those D3 guys, those D2 guys, those are guys typically that just love the game of football and want to just go play somewhere and they'll work their butts off. I want to kind of get back to the question though. Like I said, there were some parts in the story that said like that if you weren't an NCAA Division I player, that you can't get a guy to NCAA Division I, or that high school coaches or private trainers are just in it for the money. And I'll let Johnny kind of answer this.
Which one? There's two questions. Which one you want me to answer first?
I guess the difference between the coach, what they can provide, and the skills that they have versus the private trainer and the skills that they provide, what they can do.
Well, I think being a personal trainer, we can have access to the kids when you guys don't. You know, I mean, and again, that goes back to the whole trust issue. I mean, I wanted to do a quarterback deal. I sent out emails to probably all of you got one, and no one responded. You know, well, yeah, I had 3 out of 75.
That doesn't mean we didn't tell our kids.
No, I know, but what I was trying to do was build a relationship. I mean, we know each other, but what I want to do is build a relationship with you, so you guys get where I'm coming from as coaching your quarterback. And so I think that time off, that time that you guys don't have, is a perfect time to access us. Now, one of the things, you know, that kind of throws a wrench in the deal is sometimes quarterbacks want, I know we're getting quarterback-centric, but quarterbacks want stuff during the season. Well, I want to step away from that unless you're like, you know what, you know, the first thing to go in practice is quarterback individual time. You know, work with this, you know, for an hour on these couple drills. Boom, fine, I'll do it because that's what you want. You know, but I mean, the whole game, the whole training stuff is all geared towards Friday night. You know, no one's trying to take that away from anything. You know, so I think like you know the high school coach structure, you know, running an actual practice, actually playing the game. I mean, we do a small thing, and I fought 7-on-7. I didn't want to do 7-on-7 for the longest time because I felt just like you guys. I grew up coaching football. And in coaching football, it's 11-on-11, and we got guys, we got to check coverage, we got to do all this sorts of stuff. It's not just take a 5-set 7 drop and launch it deep. Like, I understand that, even though that's what we do in 7-on-7. But like, I understand that, you know, and so there's got to be some way to coexist. And you know, my kind of thing is, you know, where we stand from is let's meet. Let's talk. Let's get together. Let's throw everything out on the deal. Because I know, I mean, we only touched on 7-on-7 a little bit, but I know what the issues are with 7-on-7. It's the perceived lawlessness. It's the celebration. It's the me first attitude. It's the coaching, all that stuff. Well, I was out at UW on Sunday, high school 7-on-7. Guess what I saw? I saw kids doing somersaults. I saw coaches going after each. It's the same thing, and it's just competition. Now, it's one of those things that we all have to monitor and coach and not let it get out of control. Like, I'm not saying that, but I think, you know, remember I started this off saying I'm not a fan of 7, or wasn't a fan of 7-on-7, but I think it's kind of been dumped on us. You know, like the future of high school football. Well, because of 7-on-7, guys are running around in laundry. now we're ruining high school football, and it's like, whoa, pump the brakes a little bit, you know. And maybe you guys don't feel like that, but I wanna address it because it's
has a place where it can benefit kids. And
yeah, I mean, and I just want to address that. You know, I want to get it on tape.
It's part of the process,
you know,
just like weight training, just like speed training, just like all the things.
You're going to run around in the game. You're going to run around in 7-on-7. Cover 3 is cover 3. I mean, you know, so whatever you see should translate.
Yeah, but we all know that there's been kids that do great in 7-on-7, and once you put the pads on,
it's different.
I've had a few quarterbacks that can look great in 7-on-7, and once guys start rushing,
absolutely. I mean, 7-on-7 is a tool, right? And we talk to coaches, you know, and I think there still needs to be some way that we can coexist in this recruiting world, because coaches call us and they call you guys and all this stuff, and if we don't get along, the only person that's hurting is the kid.
Exactly.
You know? Right. So, you know, we have our facility, they have their facility, so it's like, hey, coach stops in, talks to you guys, blah, blah, hey, he's going to be up here working out, so let's all get together, let's all watch him, and, you know,
I like to do as much 7-on-7 as we can, because to me, it takes a lot longer to hone the passing game than it does the running game. And so, running game, we can get in those 10 days of pads, but the passing game almost takes, you know, all summer. And, we have a thing in the spring that we do now on Saturdays where I bring back former players, because we can't coach them. So Saturday mornings from 9 to 11, the kids will meet on our field, and the former players will come out and coach them up and do 7-on-7.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
They do 7-on-7. They love it.
Go ahead, Jared.
I think Coach Davis's question about the coaching Division I athletes, if you weren't a Division I athlete, or coaches getting paid, making money, that kind of quote was very jarring for high school coaches.
Yeah.
And upset a lot of people, I'm assuming, because when you hear like, oh, you can't coach a Division I athlete if you weren't a Division I athlete, you know, or if you're just doing this for the money, like that kind of riled some people up, and I was feeling, you know.
Yeah.
My opinion, our opinion,
yes,
we were wrong. You know, you've been interviewed, probably said something you didn't necessarily look back and go, okay.
There's a lot of examples of guys who didn't play at a high level that have had
I know. I don't think because I don't think you know we don't. I mean, okay, yeah, it's there. Okay, so let's talk about it. I don't believe that. You know, like you brought up Bill Belichick, Charlie Weiss, Mike. I mean, we could go on and on, right? You have to learn how to be a coach. It's not, well, I can throw the ball, so now I'm a great quarterback coach. Just because most of the time the best players are the worst coaches. They don't know how they did it. They just did it. Right? So, I mean, you have to learn how to coach. You have to learn how to set up a practice. You have to learn how to control a meeting room. All of that stuff. Yeah, we messed up.
There's a lot of great high school coaches that have the mindset that they want to get better every day. And they get better every year.
Absolutely.
And that's where it comes from.
Yeah, we messed up.
And it's not just the training part, but I think, for me, 7-on-7 really, I mean, I'm not a fan of 7-on-7, but within the 3 parts of this whole thing, really is the least of the concern. Yeah. Kind of the perception that within our own programs, you know, the strength and conditioning piece. I mean, strength and conditioning has changed a ton over the years. I mean,
and
you're advanced weight.
Yeah, I mean, I get to have.
You teach that class, right?
And I get I get them every other day for 85 minutes. I mean, this is not a 50-minute deal. Most of my guys are in there. There are girls basketball players in there. I got baseball players in there. It's a bigger class, and we put a ton of money into our weight room the last 2 years, just like we did when we put a bunch of money in when I was at a Gig Harbor. It's a big deal to us because we, as I said, our kids, for the most part, I've been at a money school and I've been at 2 inner city schools, Timberline and now I taught Beamer. And when money becomes the situation for if you're going to get extra training, but you don't have money. So we need to be able to create a situation where our kids can still get that same type of training, that same, whether we're using the bands, and I mean, Olympic lifts are always going to be a part of your strength and conditioning, but you have got to be up on that stuff. So when a kid does go, and they go into a training, like, the same thing that they're saying is so good here, we just did that in class, whether it's with bands and well, of course, because we're trying to stay on top of that too. Because most of my kids, I have a couple kids that rise, they're good players, but most of my kids, doesn't matter what their training facility is, they cannot afford to do that, and so we have to create that situation.
One of the things I didn't get a chance to include from you're talking about is sometimes things that you can teach to Seahawks and Division I players and NFL players doesn't work for high school players. You have to teach them differently.
Especially when you're talking about offensive linemen. Some of the kick slide and those things, but they get to that next level, they're going to need to be able to do that. But what happens if you don't have very good upper body strength? You're not going to be able to do that kind of stuff and get your hands in here. Is not always going to be the technique that's going to work. And so, we're coaching high school kids, but it's not. When they get to that next level, I mean, let's face it. When I coached Austin, people kept asking me, well, why you always got him out there spread out? Well, because at the time, particularly and even now, he didn't like to block. And so, plus, if he's 6'6" and he's going to be out there on 5'10", 160-pound guy. I mean, but we didn't train. Like you said, you know a Division I athlete when you see him, and we don't make that guy. We facilitate.
No, and that's something too that I think there's a misconception. Like, because we put something on a website or something. I mean, now it's like we're responsible for them. And I know we put some social media stuff up there that's not appropriate or it doesn't really reinforce what I'm talking about. But like, we got a kid right now that plays 7-on-7 for us, Dylan Morris, right? Just come into Washington. Like, I had nothing to do with that. We don't. We all know that. But I think there's this preconceived notion with parents, if I go to Rise and I work with Johnny, that it's like, no, sorry. Your top is a middle-of-the-road high school quarterback, maybe. So don't get mad at us. Don't get mad at you guys when he's not the next 4-star dude heading to Notre Dame. And if that's an implied deal by putting stuff like that on the internet, I mean, I don't know what to say.
Go ahead.
I don't think you guys should stop putting that stuff out there. I think it's kind of fun. I like when Reggie and Tracy put that stuff out there. I know it drives other coaches insane. And I remember when Taylor first started with the quarterback stuff, I was very adamant against it because I didn't want to have to explain to my quarterback's dad why he wasn't getting recruited. Because I was like, having this envision, like Taylor telling Dom Rocky that you are going to be, Pac-12 scholarship, and now he doesn't get a Pac-12 scholarship. Who's that going to fall back on? It'll fall back on me for calling dumb plays, right, and not developing the quarterback enough. So at first I really didn't like it, but I think it's kind of fun. I think if the kids really like that part of it, I think, for us, like quarterbacks and receivers, it's awesome and it's great. Like, we spend 10 minutes tops with our quarterbacks every day because they got to go do mesh with the running backs, and they got to throw routes to the receivers, and they got to do everything else. So we don't have a lot of individual time with quarterbacks. So if you have 45 minutes with them, and I have 7, of course they're going to get something positive from the 45 minutes they're spending with you. Same with receivers. Defensively it can be a little bit tougher because, the way we're teaching our kids to play cover 4 is going to be different than how you're teaching your kids to play cover 2. And then some kids are like, well, we did it this way, and just, that's never fun to deal with. But I think what you guys are doing with the training is great. The strength and conditioning stuff can be tough, though, too, because it's the same thing where, well, we did it this way. We have this cool thing. Like, why don't we do this cool thing? It's like, well, because we don't have enough.
And I want to respect everybody's time. We've already gone about 35 minutes over the projected time I told you guys this would go, which I should have known this was going to go much longer than I projected.
I want to say one thing.
Absolutely, go for it.
We all agree on this. What gets Johnny a college scholarship is Johnny. That's what gets the scholarship. Nobody can give him a scholarship. And I think the fact that seems to be the negative part of the survey. I think some of the survey results that you got were 97% were against 7. I think what the problem is a misconception that if they go to Rise, they're going to be D1, and as high school coach, you might ruin them. That's the big elephant in the room. I think that has to get dissolved, and that gets springed up by comments on what no big deal. I put my foot in my mouth many times. I'll do it more. So we can move forward from that. But coaches doing it for the money is much crap. That's a lot.
So I want to end I want to end on this thing. We kind of touched on this a little bit as we've gone. But most coaches, like you all mentioned, see the benefits of pirate trainers. The college recruiters I talked to, I called 7 of them. 4 of them got back to me. 2 of them agreed to talk on the record. They see the benefits of kids getting extra work on top of their team stuff, as long as they're not missing their own team stuff. Yeah, supplementing their training. And they deal with the same stuff with NFL combine trainers too. They say, yeah, we see kids get better, or they see their players get better. But for the most part, everybody sees the benefits. But then I have a quote like what Sumner coach Keith Ross told me, is that right now he just can't coexist with private trainers because of a philosophical difference. What would it take, though, to better coexist with the private trainers, and is that the desired goal for all this?
Communication.
Yeah, I met with Coach Ross this morning, 8 o'clock, and we talked about it. And what it came down to was we need to open up the lines of communication. Because, I mean, if you look around and, like, what's going on in high school football and the NFL and college and all this stuff, like, I think we need to understand that our game is under attack. You know, everyone's concussions and too much football and all this stuff. And I think that we need to do a better job of patrolling it amongst ourselves that are involved, and just stop pointing the fingers like, oh, well, you're taking responsibility for this scholarship, and you're taking responsibility for this, and who's doing that? It's like, does it really matter? Because when we start ruining the game for the kids, that's when it's going to be really bad. And I think we need to figure out how to, you know, everyone together go sit in a room or whatever, start having meetings, and be like, this is how we need to patrol our game. You know, because if you really look at it, in the state of Washington, we're behind. We're behind how they do it in California, Texas, Florida. We are behind.
I was just going to say that, you know, I think from my coaching experience, recruiting the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the Houston area, you know, Southern California, that's the big thing. Like, all this stuff we're talking about, these guys talked about 10 years ago.
Well,
you know,
I think not to cut you off, Thomas, go ahead.
Oh, no, and I think that's where we're at. Is now in Washington, we're finally seeing this, and I guess that's why for me, none of this stuff surprised me. None of this stuff is new to me. I've just seen it. I've been a college coach that went into a facility and talked to a coach about 13 guys that all went to different schools, and so for me, I just like Johnny said, I think communication is the number one thing. But just understanding that we absolutely can all coexist. There are certain things that those training facilities can do that we can't do. Now, I can't have a private workout for 6 guys that go to 6 different schools, and have a college coach come and see that. It's just not in my schedule. I got to go home to a family, But that's what these guys' jobs are. They're training these guys, and it can be a great opportunity. On the other sitting on the other side, if you're a college coach, it could be a great opportunity for you to go to one place, see 4 or 5 guys that you already had on the list, that you already talked to the high school coaches about, and actually see them do work, see the way they move, see their work ethic, see how they compete. When flat out, we flat out can't do that as high school coaches.
No, but we can, because we've been doing that. That last part, we can do that because we've been doing that for years. Because when recruiting has changed, I mean, the days are gone when you knew Mike Levenseller and Randy Hart were going to be at your place, every spring. And we're seeing, younger guys that are coming through that really don't even know the recruiting area anymore. They don't have that connection with the high school coach, but as those guys come through, when they call and say, hey, I'm coming by your school this day, and I'd like to see what period is your strength and conditioning class, because they're going to be there, because then they can stand there and they can watch that kid move and lift and get in the bands.
Right. They can't come to one place and see 5 or 6 prospects. Because let's just be honest, most of us don't have 5 or 6 Division I prospects in one place. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. How I feel like they can completely coexist, because that is one thing they can do that we can't do.
They can get.
Of course, I've had guys come to my strength conditioning. Of course they do. But again, they can't see multiple kids from other schools at my place.
And I feel like there's room for both. But I don't think the academies have that many Division I. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves too. That there's not that many Division I guys there. I mean, one of the comments I think was by going to a training facility, one benefit is that now you can train. You're so much better than maybe some of the players that you are on your
JV.
Yeah, and so now you get a chance to compete maybe with somebody on your same level. I would also argue too that it would be somebody that's your same socioeconomic peer, the same people that can afford. That's not true. The same people that can afford to go. It is true.
No, well then, okay, then come in and watch. Come in and look at it.
Maybe that's being taken over. I'm not saying you guys are rip people. I'm just telling you, many of the guys that go, they can't go. They don't have the money to go. And I'm not saying you're giving them a free ride or you're not making everybody pay. But the kids, there's many kids that their family cannot afford for them to go there. So to say that they're going maybe with an athletic peer, I say a lot more of the times not, they're going with a socioeconomic peer that their families can afford that training.
That's fair to say. I would disagree, and I would invite you to come in the winter. Like, come in and check it out and see if, we have some of these kids that if they all are socioeconomically the same. Like, just because you can pay that amount of money. Like, for our 7-on-7 team, for all those kids that do 7-on-7 with us, which are some of the top players in the state, and in fact, the top players, they're not paying, right? That's the deal. All our guys pay, and with that comes our training. Okay, with that comes a whole 6-month deal.
Like I said, I've got a couple kids.
We don't charge extra, but
So it's not extra to do 7 on
It's
7
not-
on top of your training?
No, you pay for 7 on 7. The training is not extra.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it's whatever. It's the same.
You pay for training, 7
I
on
think
7 is
the
not
other
extra.
thing-
Okay.
Yeah, you should do
The other
that.
thing I'd like to add is, we're talking about the 10% that are possibly D1 elite athletes. What about the other 90%? And what about the reason I got in? I love to help our D1 guys go D1. But I also love to help the autistic kid who's going to have a great experience for 4 years and remember it for the rest of his life. Because I think we'll all agree that high school football is one of the best times of our life.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons I became a coach. And I think we're getting away. We talk about, well, Texas does this and California does this. What about just having a good high school program that services all 100 kids and gives something for everybody? We run a no-cut program for a reason. There's high standards that you have to meet. But if you may be the worst football player in the world, and if you meet your grade standard and you come to the weight room and you do all the work, you're going to be in the brotherhood, and you're going to be on that squad. You might not play a lot, but you're going to have a great experience in our program. And so I don't want to focus just on the top guys. I think that's what some of the training programs can do and help those kids. We've had, in the 30-some years I've been at Lakes High School, we've been privileged to have 42 Division I guys. None of those guys did any of the extra work, but they all did basketball, football.
As far as private training,
Right.
extra work.
None of them did private training. None of them. Even the
But
recent
was it
guys.
available to all those guys?
Well, Benning
the other thing.
Potawai is playing for
A lot of these
Washington.
guys, it wasn't even available. So,
Well, that's
yeah.
not true. Benning Potawai, we got guys that are playing Division I right now. And I'm not saying
Well, I'm not saying none. I'm just saying 42 is a lot over 30 years, but
Zach Banner was called by everybody to go participate in those training programs. His dad is one of the most outstanding parents I've ever had in my program. He knew that if he was in our weight room and if he was playing basketball and he was throwing the shot and disc, that he would still get where he needed to be, and it worked. So, not that he couldn't have got better doing some of the rides. I'm not against that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, you can get there doing Darren's strength and conditioning program. But you can get there doing Steve's program. And then extra is fine. But what about having a great experience in high school?
Absolutely.
Some kids are so worried about the D1 as freshmen, they miss out on the 4-year experience.
You mentioned Jermaine Kearse was a 3-sport athlete. You mentioned Reggie Williams played multiple sports for you when there a couple of the players as examples. And
go ahead.
I was gonna say, so like before, like I know, like, but like I think Rise Football provider and FSP and my uncle's little passing academy that he does. Those are all good services. Like that. There's filling a niche. Russell Wilson Passing Academy. Like those are valuable experiences for kids. If they have the money to do it, great. I think one thing that'd be really good is to kind of talk about that recruiting aspect, because I think that's the big misconception that parents have. Is if I go to Rise, if I go to FSP, if I go to Steve Gervais Passing Academy or Russell Wilson Passing Academy or whatever, I'm going to get recruited. I think one of the things.
And that was the point I was making. You don't have to go to Rise to get D1
absolutely.
But I'm saying, like, one of the things we can talk about.
I don't think anybody's suggesting that.
No, that's the parents' perception.
What are things like for parents that we could give as like advice to them to help their kids get recruited? Like what?
I think it would be this. So if we had an open relationship, right, and we built good, strong relationships where it's like, hey, we're going to talk about this meeting and we attack it together. So you guys need to understand that we're not telling the 5'7" kid who runs a 5'2", hey, you're going to go play wide out of Washington, right? Because we don't say that, But down the mom sees, well, they're working out and they're doing this, and now he's on Facebook and Instagram, working for Rise. How come he's not starting for you?
Well, some of it's not what you're saying. It's their assumption because they're paying. They go down that path on their own.
Yeah.
So I'm not pointing the finger at you.
No, and I'm not saying, but if we attack it together.
Right.
So everyone's hearing the same message. Like, listen, it's genetics. Go look at the media guide. Are there any kids like you? Well, then it's not happening.
Well, I have a couple guys. I have some guys that are at Rise, and right now I'm talking about this. I got a freshman and a sophomore. Get them ready to play Friday night. We're not talking Division I.
Yeah.
But get them ready to play Friday night. Hey, Reggie, I need him playing corner. I need him playing a lot of corner and working at quarterback, because he might be here backing up there. And so we talk about that. We communicate, and it's not about Division I. Okay, but when it comes down to it, a parent with the misconception that if they go to Rise, and it's not on you guys, it's on the parents. I firmly believe it's on the parents if they put that in their head, that if I'm paying for this and they've got these kids listed on their website that have gone D1, which you should, we should celebrate all those kids from every school, that my kid has a chance of going. So I'm going to write a check to Rise first before I write a check to go to team camp.
And
I haven't had that happen.
Okay,
and if I did, then I know that
Yeah.
I could talk to Reggie and say, hey, he's not going to team camp, and I know that would flip. But I'm not. But not all groups that train we have that relationship. I believe.
We need to make sure that that's not happening. One thing that I think we could do a better job of is talking to these parents, right? Because they all say that they want their son to have the best football experience possible, right? That's why they spend the money for training, 7-on-7, all this other stuff. We collectively need to do a better job of, if you want your son to have a great high school experience, you need to be 100% bought in with the high school program. Everything. What that means mom and dad, you're volunteering at the snack bar, doing this. That means you're selling your bars or whatever. I mean, you're buying your sweatshirts. Like that is part of it. It's not just we do some training, we show up, and then we stand back in the stands and then complain that the coach ain't throwing them the ball. Like that's not creating a conducive environment. So like I think that we have to, and this goes back to us patrolling this whole deal, where I think we need to figure out some sort of game plan where we do it together, or you guys are, however it is, but we need to educate the parents on, if you want to have a great high school experience, this is what it entails. This is what you have to do as a parent. This is your level of expectation you have to have for your son. And I think if we could join forces on that and push that agenda, then 90% of this stuff goes away. Because team camp is great. Everyone loves team camp. They need to be at team camp. They need to be at team camp more. They need to be at national championship 7-on-7 deal. No one's disagreeing with that, but we just got to figure out a way to push that agenda.
I think in my reporting, that's probably the biggest thing that came up, is that parents just have so many different directions they're kind of being pulled, and what's good for their kid and what's not. And I've had a lot of coaches say it's like it comes out of a good heart from parents. They want to see their kid, get this exposure and be a recruited player.
I don't know if they're being pulled as much as they have some of them, and I hate to talk this way because 95% of our parents are amazing. But it's the 5% that have that agenda.
Absolutely.
That's just unrealistic.
And
I think the more we inform them, whether it's Rise having a parent night where they talk about those things Johnny just talked about, or us having a parent night, coaches, and we all talked about that. We all do that because I really believe the more information you give people, the less mind movies you're going to come up with.
One of the components, you're talking about the communication piece of getting together. One of the components would be just because the math doesn't lie. We can just take, and you put some of it in your article. The NCAA. I mean, what percentage of people are actually going to play college football? It's 6% or whatever it is, and it's 2% or Division I. That math does not lie. That math goes every year, year in and year out.
Right.
And you can take a look in the room. You can look at how many kids are on your team. You can look at how many people are training in your facility, and the numbers just don't lie. I mean, and for the parents, if it's coming from the academy and it's coming from the coaching staff, people are saying but just remember, in the end, it doesn't matter how much you're paying here. And those huddles are great. I mean, we all talk about huddle, but we know half those highlight videos are being made by our parents.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Remember, we used to be able to, when I still try to get my kids to say, let me look at that first before you send that out there, because what you may think is good or what mom and dad thinks is good.
So it's not the music and all that.
Yeah.
I've done that. Hey, cut that play, cut that play. Those aren't highlights.
I mean, and they are trying to help.
Oh yeah, you definitely got to help them out, coach them up on the highlight films too.
And like I said, I want to respect everybody's time here. This has been, I think, incredibly informal, and for those that be listening to this, I think hopefully they get something out of this too. And like I said, the goal of this was to provide something for parents and players that what should you be doing in your off season? What is the right direction, places to go? And I just want to kind of open up the one last thing. If there's any other things you guys wanted to add or any extra thoughts you guys had that you didn't get a chance to say, you'd like to say now before we close this out?
I think that the perception, looking at your percentages on how many people are thinking that 7-on-7 is ruining the game, high school coaches and everything, I think that maybe you have to get more specific than that. It's find out who are your kids working with and have you talk to them. I'd be interested in seeing how many of those coaches feel that that Rise Academy is ruining my program, because I've worked with them and I don't. So if you haven't talked with them, you haven't sat down and listened to them talk, you know, I firmly believe, I honestly believe, talking with Reggie, that they love kids and they want what's best for kids as well. I don't, it looks like it, you know, from the survey, not every group is like that. We might be, you know, talking a lot about Rise is doing a lot of good things, but there might be some groups out there that are just dirty as can be that I don't know about as a coach. So I want to make sure to end this that I've only dealt with Rise, and that's my experience. I haven't dealt with anybody else, so I don't know the negative sides that some of you guys probably have experienced.
Well, yeah, anybody else have anything else you wanted to add before we?
I think it's always good to get together and communicate, share ideas, find out ways we can get better. We all have the same intent, and that's helping kids as much as we possibly can. That's why we're doing this, not for the money. You know,
I don't want to give you business ideas or suggestions, but or make it feel like
quiet. We'll talk about it later.
But I think it'd be great if you guys had like recruiting nights. If Rise or FSP hosted recruiting nights, like maybe in February, because you know it's one thing for Coach Gervais, who played high school football, and my counselor, Mr. Nishimoto, who coaches linebackers and played high school football, and you know, for us to get up and talk to parents about recruiting. But if we had one of those guys, if Reggie came to Auburn, we opened it up to all the, you know, anyone in the area wants to come, Auburn Mountainview TAM, come and talk about it. I think that could be something that
I would say this, why don't we just do it together?
Well, no, I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to do it. I mean,
and that's something that
why
Strandley.
we do
Yeah,
it
but
together?
another voice works.
Yeah.
We might be saying the same thing to our guys, and they don't hear it. Then
all of a
you
sudden
come in
Johnny
and say,
Durocher says it. Oh,
Well, I'm saying,
yeah.
we come to Auburn Mountainview, you know,
Yeah.
and we do it together, because then there's no miscommunication.
Yeah.
I think that's what's killed us in the past, where the kid says this and we're like, no, that we never said that. Like,
Yeah.
where are you getting that
Right.
idea from?
That's good enough.
And
You
we've all been played at some point in time.
Yeah.
And Strandley actually mentioned that when he was talking. I don't think I included in the story, but he said like he feels it's up to a lot of college coaches too to step out and talk about some of the stuff that they're looking for, because it's one thing with a high school coach to say something, but it just has more. It just kind of speaks a little louder when it comes from someone with a pedigree, and that's what he was talking about too. There's more people that need to speak out about that
anyone
kind of
they'll
stuff.
listen to works.
Yeah.
I'll bring in Dumbo if they'll listen. That's great.
I think, are we almost done?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to end it with this one thing here. One thing that I think that we have kind of looked back over the past 2 years of running Rise, I think that we've learned a lot. I think that we've made some mistakes. I think we've done some good things. And, you know, the thing that keeps kind of replaying through my mind is, you know, when you guys first became head coaches, you're probably better now than you were then. And I feel like that's kind of where we're at right now as a company. And, you know, we want to get better, and that's why I'm here, we're getting feedback. And so one of the things that I want to make sure that we do is we continue this dialogue. You know, so when I send you an email, it's like, hey, let's get together, let's talk. Because I want to be able to calm all your anxieties about 7-on-7 and training and how we do it, and you know how other people do it. I can't speak on, but like for me, it's super important that we have the high school coaching community bought in, because like I've known you forever. You know what I mean? Like you guys are people that I've grown up respecting, and you know I was in that kind of fraternity there for a little bit, and so there's a great amount of respect, and so like we need to you know keep these dialogues open, and I want to make sure that when I call you, you know, we talk, you know, whatever you guys need from us. I think that's kind of get missed too a little bit, is we have this hidden agenda of coaching quarterbacks, or this hidden agenda of doing 7-on-7. And it's like, let's all throw everything out on the table and let's just coach ball. You know, that's our biggest thing at this point now.
Well, again, I want to thank everybody for coming here, and this has, I think, been like I said, a pretty eye-opening thing for coaches, for private trainers, for players and parents, and I just want to thank you all again and appreciate all your time for everybody coming. And thanks, Coach Ford.
Thanks, TJ, for putting this together, man.